Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the live in-person and live Zoom worship service of the Universalist Unitarian Church of Riverside. Our opening hymn this morning is "I Wish I Knew How." For those in the sanctuary, please sit back and enjoy the hymn, but please do not sing along. Thank you for joining us here and in person, and thank you for joining us remotely by Zoom, where we continue live streaming and posting these services on our YouTube channel for our virtual attendees. I'm Tinka Friend, a member of the worship committee, and I will be your worship associate today. Other members of the worship committee you will hear from include Alec, Peck, singing our hymns and giving our sermon. We welcome you to join us this morning with an open mind and an open heart, and with muted electronic devices, please. So this is the time. We invite you to leave your worries and defenses at the door and trust that what happens in worship is inspiring and powerful. Together, we affirm that this day and our being together can make each of us braver, more compassionate, and wiser as we begin a new day and a new week. Although our doors are open, the pandemic is not over. So while we're here, please keep your masks on and socially distance. We can speak in normal tones, but singing or chanting creates an increased risk of airborne exposure. So we ask you to refrain doing that for the time being. We invite those of you in the sanctuary to sit back and enjoy listening. For those of you at home, sing your hearts out. And now I invite you to sit back, take a slow, deep breath as we move into the worship hour. For our call to worship, you are welcome to read with me the mission statement of our church. Our mission is to foster a diverse religious community that celebrates life, affirms the individual, encourages spiritual growth and open thought, and works to advance social justice and environmental sustainability. Alec has been a practicing UU for 23 years, raised in a UU church, chosen by his father, who was raised Quaker, and mother, who was raised Jewish, though both humanist in praxis. Alex attended the Passover Seder dinner held at his UU church throughout his childhood and has fond memories of the rituals those humanist Jews performed each year. He is now completing his PhD at UC Riverside while serving as the chair of the worship committee here at UUCR, and we're very grateful to him. The Passover Seder is one of the most important celebrations of the Jewish calendar. Even Jews that are not religious the rest of the year will attend a Seder. Seders also have a universal appeal because of the values being celebrated: freedom, striving against oppression, and the enhancing of liberty for all. These values are a source of inspiration for people fighting against their own oppression. The Haggadah, the book that serves as a guide to the Seder, comes in many flavors to respond to different needs, historical circumstances, and to many different people: Orthodox, conservative, Reform, Reconstructionist and Secular Jews, feminist, gays and lesbians, even Christian-oriented. This is a Unitarian Universalist version of what Passover Seder means to us in our modern age. We have two lightings of sacred flames. The first is the occupied Indigenous Peoples Remembrance Candle. The second is the lighting of our own chalice, the symbol of our faith. We walk upon the traditional territories of diverse and sovereign peoples, the original people of this land, who continue to cry out for justice and self-determination. This spot that we occupy was first the sacred space of several groups of Indigenous peoples, including the Cahuilla, the Cupeño, and the Serrano. We, the Universalist Unitarian Church of Riverside, light this sacred flame as the stewards of this sacred and holy place. We are blessed with a space and opportunity to strive to live out our common principles, to bring justice, equity, and compassion into our daily lives, to resist all that threatens the earth and her people, and to be a part of a world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Let these thoughts carry us forth as we journey and worship together. Today's reading of the Chalice Lighting is Nerot, Candles, from a Passover Haggadah for UUs. It is said, there is nothing new under the sun, yet nothing remains the same. The sun rises and the sun sets, yet each day and each season is fresh and new. The lighting of these candles symbolizes a renewal of life and a reaffirmation of freedom. Let us bless the light as we gather together to kindle this sacred flame. With the light of liberation, let us bless life. We have a tradition here at UUCR to welcome those who are visitors or perhaps returning after some time away. We know it can be uncomfortable to stand up and speak in front of others, and so I will now ask a volunteer from someone who has been here a while to tell us their name and how they found out about our church. We ask you to step close to the mic, speak directly and clearly into it so everyone can hear. Kate, are you able to leave your little corner for a moment to come down? No. Okay, Grace. So tell us your name, how long you've been here, and how you found out about our church.
Okay. My name is Grace. I've been here since, I think it was, I want to say 2019, if I'm not mistaken. I was walking around downtown Riverside after coming back from Singapore, and I realized I needed something spiritual in my life, and I was curious, so I walked into this church. And it reminds me of a phrase that I've thought about a lot, which is, faith is not a guilt trip, it's a journey.
Thank you. And that's how it's done. If you're new here, a visitor, or even an old friend, please raise your hand to stand and come up before the mic that's right here in front of the pulpit. And if there's anyone online who would like to introduce themselves, please raise your hand and we will call on you with Zoom. Please let us know who you are, where you're from, and how you found out about us. Amy, did you already come forth and introduce yourself? Would you do that, please? So your name, where you're from, and how you found out about us.
Okay. My name is Amy Hall, and I am not from Riverside, but I have a huge spot in my heart for Riverside. And I actually came here because Tinka friend and her husband Nick, hi Nick, invited me to come and said, just check this out, because I was actually raised very strictly Christian, and I've lived quite a life, and so I have my own views and opinions, and I kind of wanted to see what it would be like to be in a different kind of a church that was non-judgmental. And so therefore, I've been here 3 times now, 3 or 4 times. Mm-hmm. And I always feel warmly received when I come to the door. And I feel like I'm slowly making new friends. And everyone is very interesting to me with the things that they say, because it gives me food for thought. So that's why I keep coming back.
Thank you, Amy.
You're welcome.
Adam, is there anyone online? No. Okay, if no one's being moved by the Spirit to come forward, I will continue. For other new guests, please join us for socializing and coffee hour after the service. We would love to chat with you out in the parish hall, where you can also find our visitors book. So please leave your name before you leave so that we know that you are here, and leave your contact information if you want to know about any of our upcoming events. For those online, the best way to get added to the mailing list is to email the church office at admin.uuchurchofriverside.org. During the service, we will mention several websites, email addresses, and phone numbers. At the end of the service, we will leave up a slide with all of this information, and it is also available on our website. Sharing joys and concerns is really one of the important rituals here in our UU community. It's an opportunity to share milestones, losses, achievements, and experiences with one another. Now that our doors are open again, on the first Sunday of each month, we can both hear from those in the sanctuary and read the contributions that we have received. In front of the pulpit, there is a book where you can write down your joys and concerns whenever you are here in the sanctuary. For those of you at home, you can send your joys and concerns anytime throughout the month to our UU Church of Riverside at gmail.com. Our next joys and concerns will be on May 1st. Coming up on May 6th and 7th is our annual spring yard sale, a fundraiser for our church. Please see Kate Lewicki, who's in the corner, and Linda Van Voorhees, who's sitting in the pews, if you are able to help with sorting, setting up, and/or selling. The Social and Environmental Justice Committee meeting is today in the annex at 12 noon. You can find the Zoom link and more information on the website under Social and Environmental Justice. And the chair of our committee, Adam, is going to come up to tell you a few things.
First of all, just that today, at today's meeting, we're going to be continuing the conversation about Zeroscape we've been having, and we're also going to talk about some bills in the California legislature that we might be interested in supporting. There's also, I want to remind everybody about our fifth principle, the use of democracy and the importance of voting. There is an election coming up in June, there's primaries, and then there will be a general election in November. It's important to make sure you're registered to vote and that you vote. If you're not registered to vote, come see me. We can get you registered to vote. There is going to be, because of the last census, they redrew some of the lines, and so there is a change in the way Riverside is represented in the state government. No longer split between two different assembly members. The majority of the city of Riverside is now in the same assembly district. May 3rd, ICUC clergy and youth will be holding a candidates forum for the people who are running for that seat. It will be 6 to 8 at the Congregational Church across the street from us here. But we're trying to get everybody's opinion on what questions we should ask these people who are representing Riverside. So if you go to that webpage, uuchurchriverside.org/justice, there's a map of what the district is. If you're in that district, there's a link. Fill out that survey. The survey, the link is icuc.link/district58, if you want to write that down. No spaces, no capitals, just icuc.link/district58. But if you go to the website here, that link is on there with a map of the district. So check that out, fill out that survey, let us know what's important to you so that when we write the questions, we know what to ask. Also, if you're interested in being part of that, event, come to our meeting, because we're going to talk a little about that after service. So thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Our hymn now is Spirit of Life. If you are in the sanctuary, I invite you to sit back. You may close your eyes if you wish and listen. This portion of our service is to support our beloved historical church. This can be accomplished in several ways. In addition to the weekly collection, you may send your checks to the church address, which is shown here. You may contribute by PayPal using the QR code, which is on the church's website and also in the newsletter. Stater Brothers gives our church a small rebate on Stater grocery cards, which we will have in church each Sunday. You get the full value, and the church also receives a percentage. Amazon cards are also available. Please donate as the Spirit moves you by whatever method works best for you. Thank you for your generosity. And to those who give of their time and their talent, thank you for your generous care and attention. Our next hymn is From You I Receive. Please sit back quietly and enjoy.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live.
Our meditation today is by Richard S. Gilbert. For the sound of bow on string, of breath over reed, of touch on keyboard. For slants of sunlight through windows, for shimmering shadows on snow, for the whisper of wind on my face. For the smooth skin of an apple, for the caress of a collar on my neck. For the prickling of my skin when I am deeply moved. For the pounding of my heart when I run. For the peace of soul at day's end. For familiar voices in family rites, for the faces of friends in laughter and tears, for the tender human arms that hold me, for the flashes of memory that linger, for the mysterious moments that beckon, for the particularity of this instant, for the silence of moonlit nights, for the sound of rain on my roof, of wind in dry leaves, of waves caressing the shore, for the softness of summer breezes, for the crispness of autumn air, for dark shadows on white snow, for the resurrection of spring, for the faithful turning of the seasons, for angular leafless trees, for gentle hills rolling in the distance, for meandering streams seeking an unseen sea, for cornstalks at stiff attention and brittle plants bristling past their prime, for unharvested gardens returning plants to enrich the soil, for the sight of familiar faces, the sound of our spoken names, the welcoming embrace of outstretched arms, for the ritual of friendship, reminding us we matter. Thanks be for these. Now let us pause for a moment of silence. And now I would like to welcome Alec Peck, presenting for us Passover, A Hope for Freedom.
Thank you, Jinko. And in a few moments, I will want the slideshow to be shared on Zoom, but for the moment. So I've taken most of the words for today's sermon directly from a Passover Haggadah for the Unitarian Universalist Seder, which is primarily based on the Machar Haggadah for Passover, and it's a script to be read during the Passover dinner. This is a script which I heard each year at the DuPage UU Church's Seder dinner, and I have fond memories of hunting for the afikomen and other lighthearted parts of the ceremony meant for the children. However, I also strongly remember specific passages which have resonated with me my whole life. We come together on Passover evening for many reasons. We are here because spring is all around and the earth is reborn. It is a good time to celebrate with family and friends. We are here because we are all Jews in spirit, and we can appreciate Judaism's historic roots as part of our own UU tradition. We are here to remember the old story of the liberation of the ancient Hebrews from the slavery in Egypt, a great struggle for freedom and dignity. We are here because the struggle for human freedom never stops. We are here to remember all people who are still struggling for their freedom. As we feel how wonderful and important it is for diverse peoples to come together, let us recite the words of Hine Matov, and please read with me the italicized text. Once we've gotten the Zoom shared. Hine Matov Uma Naim Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. Behold, how good and how pleasant it is when people dwell together in unity. Could I have the next slide, Adam? Since Passover is a celebratory feast, each food and drink is highly symbolic, and their consumption represents and reminds us of our dedication to our ideals and the lessons of the past. On Passover, we drink 4 cups of wine or grape juice, the fruits of the vine. There are many explanations for this custom. They may be seen as symbols of various things: the 4 corners of the earth, the freedom that freedom must live everywhere, the 4 seasons of the year, for freedom's cycle must last through all seasons, or the 4 promises of redemption: I will bring you out, I will deliver you, I will redeem you, and I will take you to be my people. A full cup of wine symbolizes complete happiness. The triumph of Passover is diminished by the sacrifice of many human lives where plagues were visited upon the peoples of Egypt. In the story, the plagues that befell the Egyptians resulted from the decisions of tyrants, but the great suffering occurred amongst those who had no choice but to follow. It is fitting that we mourn their loss of life and express our sorrow over their suffering as well. For we cannot take joy in the suffering of others. Therefore, during the Seder, we diminish the wine in our cups as we recall the 10 plagues by dipping the tip of a knife in the wine and marking drops onto our plate. The 10 plagues which befell Egypt are blood, frogs, gnats, flies, cattle disease, boil, hail, locusts, darkness, and finally the death of the firstborn. But let us now celebrate the bounty of our life by reading an updated version of the traditional Dayenu responsively. Dayenu is a Hebrew word meaning enough of us. Please read with me the italicized text. If we were delivered from bondage while others remain enslaved, Could we say Dayenu? If we could be at peace while others died in war, could we say Dayenu? If we were born to prosper while others were born to poverty, could we say Dayenu? If we alone were chosen while others were forgotten, could we say Dayenu? If we had enough to eat while others starved, could we say Dayenu? If our houses were safe while others lived in fear, could we say Dayenu? If we had a place where we belonged while others were far from home, could we say Dayenu? Next slide, please. In the same spirit, our celebration today is also shadowed by our awareness of our continuing sorrow and oppression in all parts of the world. Ancient plagues are mirrored in modern tragedies. In our own time, ordinary people suffer and die as a result of tyrants who rule over them. While we may rejoice in the defeat of tyrants, we must also express our sorrow at the suffering of those many innocent people. As the pain of others diminishes our joys, we must once again diminish our ceremonial drink as we recite the names of these modern plagues: hunger, war, tyranny, greed, bigotry, injustice, poverty, ignorance, the pollution of the earth, and indifference to suffering. The first cup, Odish, is dedication. The first glass is filled with the fruit of the vine. Spring is the season of rebirth and new life. We raise our cups to signify our gratitude for life. Tonight, let us drink to life. L'chaim. Miriam, the sister of Moses, was a strong prophet who first saved Moses when he was a baby, and then joined him to lead the Jewish people to freedom. In the book of Exodus, we read, "And Miriam the prophet took a timbrel in her hand, and all the women went out after her with timbrels and with dances, and Miriam sang unto them, Sing ye to the Lord, he is highly exalted. The horse and his rider bathe, he thrown into the sea. As Miriam once led the women of Israel in song and dance to praise God for the miracle of the splitting of the Red Sea, so too we rejoice this Passover to celebrate freedom. Miriam's cup is filled with water rather than wine. A legend teaches us that a miraculous well accompanied the Hebrews throughout their journey in the desert, providing them with water. The well was given by God to Miriam to honor her bravery and her devotion to the Jewish people. Both Miriam and her well were a spiritual oasis in the desert, sources of sustenance and healing. Her words of comfort gave the Hebrews the faith and the confidence to overcome the hardships of the Exodus. We fill Miriam's cup with water to honor her role in ensuring the survival of the Jewish people. Tonight, our water will be symbolic of that our daughters may continue to draw from the strength and the wisdom of their heritage. We place Miriam's cup on the Seder table tonight to honor the importance of the role of women in our tradition and our history. These stories have been told too little. And may we, like the children of Israel leading Egypt, be guarded and nurtured and kept alive in the wilderness. Give us wisdom to understand that the journey itself holds the promise of redemption. The second cup on the Seder is dedicated to the struggle for peace and freedom. The second cup of wine is dedicated to all people who seek a secure life free of fear and prosecution. And we hope that we may learn to all live together in freedom and peace. Let us strive to fulfill the word of the prophet Micah. They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not take sword upon nation, and they shall never again know war. But they shall sit every one under the vines and the fig trees, and none shall make them afraid. The freedom we celebrate tonight is not only the freedom from slavery, it is also the freedom to live in peace, with dignity, and with hope for a bright future. This constant vision has inspired people since the time when the Bible was written. This Passover, we celebrate our own freedom. Let us take notice of this ongoing struggle towards freedom here and in many other parts of the world. One of the customs of the Seder is asking the questions about the rituals of what the Seder really means. The Passover tradition involves the youngest children asking the 4 questions. Why is this night different than all other nights? On all of the nights, we eat either bread or matzah. Why on this night do we eat only matzah? On this night, on all other nights, we eat herbs of any kind. Why on this night do we eat only the bitter herbs? On all other nights, we do not dip our herbs even once. Why on this night do we dip them twice? On all other nights, we eat either sitting or leaning. Why on this night do we eat while leaning? These questions are a central part of the Seder ceremony. Yet before we answer them, let us tell a story of hope. The tale of our people's first quest for freedom from slavery in Egypt comes from ancient times. It is written that long ago, during a time of famine, the ancient Israelites traveled to Egypt. They did not go to settle permanently, but only to escape the famine. The Israelites at that time were a single family, Jacob and his children. One of Jacob's sons was Joseph. Joseph was gifted about a dream and what they meant. Joseph interpreted Pharaoh's dream. He advised the Pharaoh that a great famine was coming and how to save Egypt from it. Because of this, Pharaoh made Joseph a leader over the people of Egypt. But as time passed, another Pharaoh became the ruler of Egypt. He did not remember about Joseph and his wise leadership. And this new Pharaoh turned the Israelites into slaves and burdened them with heavy work and sorrow. After the Israelites were in Egypt for over 400 years, one man rose among them. Moses demanded that Pharaoh let his people go. Many times he risked his life to insist on the freedom of his people until finally he succeeded. At our Passover Seder, we celebrate the story of Moses and the people that he led out of slavery 3,000 years ago. We celebrate the struggle of all people to be free. Throughout the centuries, the story of Moses and the Exodus from Egypt has inspired Jews and non-Jews in times of persecution and hardship. Let us remember that the thirst for freedom exists in all people. Many centuries after these legendary times of Moses, African people were brought to the American as slaves. These slaves longed for freedom, and they were inspired by the story of Moses and the ancient Israelites. When the slaves in America sang, "Go down, Moses," they were thinking of their own leaders who were working to end slavery. Let us now listen to this traditional African American spiritual.
When Israel was in Egypt land,
Here is an image of a traditional Seder plate. One of these is typically placed in the center of the Seder, and portions of it are taken by each of the members in order to participate in the ceremony. On the Seder plate, you traditionally find several specific items. Salt water. Why do we dip our food in salt water on 2 times this night? The first time, the salty taste reminds us of the tears which we cried when we were slaves. Karpas, the dipping greens, parsley and celery, are symbols of all kinds of spring greenery. And the second time we dip the greens, the salt water and the greens help us to remember the ocean and the green plants of the earth from which we get the water and the air and the food that enable us to live. On this night, we bless the fruit of the earth. Zoroa, why do we have a shank bone on the Seder plate? The shank bone is symbolic of the Paschal lamb sacrifice made for Pesach in the Temple of Jerusalem. In the Exodus story, the doorposts of Jewish homes were marked with animals, blood so that the angel of death would pass over their homes and not take their firstborn children. The Pesach sacrifices were made each year as a symbol of that act. Matzah, the unleavened bread. Why do we eat matzah? Matzah reminds us that when the ancient Israelites left Egypt, they had to leave suddenly without time to prepare. They departed so quickly that the bread allegedly did not have time to bake or to rise. This is the bread of affliction that our ancestors ate during their hasty departure from Egypt. Let all who are hungry come and eat. Let all who are in need come and share in our Passover. Maror, the bitter herb. Why do we have maror on the Seder plate? Tradition says that this bitter herb is to remind us of the bitterness of slavery. As it is said, they embittered their lives with hard labor, with mortar and with bricks, and with all the manner of labor in the field. Betzah, the egg. Why do we have an egg on the Seder plate? The egg is a symbol of life and of the return of rebirth that occurs each spring. But the egg is also fragile, and so it represents the potential that can be destroyed. Growing life needs warmth and love and security, guidance, hope, and vision. Betzah is also a symbol of the interdependent web of life. Charoset, condiment. Why do we place charoset on the Seder plate? Fruits, nuts, and spices and wine are combined to make this sweet condiment. Because it is the color of clay and mortar, it reminds us of the brick and mortar used by the slaves, Jews and others, in building Pharaoh's palaces and cities. Yet the taste of charoset is sweet, and thus reminds us of the sweetness of freedom. We eat together this maror and charoset, the bitter and sweet, to remind us that life's sadness is tempered by joy. Taputs, the orange. Why have we added an orange to our Seder plate? This orange is a symbol of the liberation of sexuality and gender roles. We place this fruit among our ceremonial foods as a symbol of our inclusion and acknowledgement of sexual minorities in our community. We recognize these contributions made by these families, family members, and friends. By welcoming all with open hearts and minds, we celebrate diversity and freedom. Subin, leaning. Why do we eat while leaning on this night? In ancient times, eating while reclined was a sign of luxury because they were being fed by others. Traditional Haggedahs instruct participants to eat the matzah while leaning to one side as a sign of our freedom. Although today we celebrate freedom and equality by sitting upright and feeding ourselves. And the leaning question remains in the service only as a reminder that there are still people longing for freedom and that we should appreciate our own freedom. Adam, can I have the next slide? The third out of 4 cups on the Seder night is the cup of awareness. We drink this third cup in gratitude for all of the gifts that we have been given. The Seder reminds us of the gifts of relationships of family and friends, and of our material possessions, and of the greatest gift of all, the ability to challenge, to question, to choose, and to strive for freedom. Just as the food of our Seder Passover nourishes our bodies, our sharing and our reflections at this Seder uplift our spirits. Next slide, please. Here is an image of Elijah's cup. This is the cup of hope. The Seder tradition is to pour a cup for the Hebrew prophet Elijah. For millennia, Jews opened the door for him, inviting him to join in their Seders, hoping that he would bring with him the Messiah to save the world. Yet the task of saving the world, once ascribed to prophets, messiahs, and gods, must be now taken up by us mere mortals, by common people with a shared goal. Working together for progressive change, we can bring about improvement to the world for justice and for peace. We can and we must. At the end of the Seder dinner, we symbolically and often literally open the door to invite all people of goodwill and all those in need of work, to work with us for a better world. This Passover, we dedicate ourselves to improving this world. This Passover, we recall the struggles against slavery and injustice. We sing of freedom and peace. Today, living in the United States, we are more free than people have been at any other time in history. And yet history shows that life is ever changing, and we must learn how to survive under all conditions. When we are prosecuted, we must struggle for our freedom. The more freedom we attain, the more we must help others to attain freedom. This is the lesson of Passover. This is why we celebrate the Festival of Freedom. And now, please join me in reading responsively this great lesson, reading number 579 from Singing the Living Tradition. We can never make the world safe by fighting. Every nation must learn that the people of all nations are children of God and must share the wealth of the world. You may say this is impracticable, far away, can never be accomplished, but it is the work we are appointed to do. Sometime, somehow, somewhere, we must each teach this great lesson. Our closing hymn this morning is Wade in the Water. For those here in the sanctuary, please sit back, close your eyes, and listen quietly.
Children, wade in the
My friends, when you go from here, know that our hearts are always in a holy place, for we are always connected one to another. Know that deep down our hearts beat one universal rhythm. May we each find the sacred space to hear that. Namaste, amen, and blessed be. And thank you, Alec, for sharing your valuable time, insights, and experience with us this morning. It is sincerely appreciated, and we look forward to seeing you again. We're going to have about a 10 to 15-minute discussion with Alec following the service. If you have any questions, be aware that this will be included on the video that is posted.
Thank you, Tinka. If anyone wanted to share any thoughts or comments they had about the service, this would be a great time to have a discussion.
Thank you, Alec. Really appreciated you doing the Universalist Unitarian, Pesach Haggadah and everything. We've done that here before, and it's really nice to have that back. And I really appreciate the spirit of bringing our universalism to the concept of Dainu, which is really some of what we as Unitarian Universalists can contribute to this in a polarized and tribalized world. Thank you.
Easter can be kind of a weird time for me, because as a pagan, I'm sitting here going, oh good, the holiday where somebody decided to kick a pagan culture 10 or 12 times in the head, and rejoice in the fact that they're free now, and that the poor folk who had to, the soldiers, the commoners, all that stuff, that they had to do the job, because if they didn't, they'd be killed by other soldiers. And it was moving to me that you don't gloat when somebody gets killed doing the job of oppressing somebody else because they've been ordered to. You got to break the chain. You can't sit there and let them keep kicking the heck out of you. But you've got to strive for freedom, and occasionally that means something. If you look at the modern world, there's the whole back the blue thing, but then all of a sudden that gets complicated on January 6th real quick. And it was important that you tackled that one and didn't rejoice in the fact that that there was enough wrath in the air to kill the firstborn. You think about the math on that, it's like, God has got to figure out a way to back down on the auto smite just a little bit. When in the story of Lot, if you know how to nuke a person, you don't have to nuke the city. And Passover, like I say, it's a rough one as a pagan, because I've heard people talk about it and it turns into a flexing contest between the Egyptians and the others. And like I say, back the blue to an extent, but at the same time, know when it's time to be free. And I thank you for that very much.
Thank you, Bill. Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to tag on to that. I found it certainly difficult not to think about the Ukraine conflict, reading certain parts of that especially thinking about, the Russian soldiers who were told to march through Chernobyl, not even knowing what it was. Surely we should feel bad for them too, right? They're also victims of this war. But I also want to say it's not all doom and gloom. I want to say that at the Seder tradition at my home church, when we go over the plagues of Egypt, we have little plush plagues. So it's a little boil with a little smiley face, and we chuck the plush plagues into the center of the table as we recite them. So, you have to try to keep it a little lighthearted.
This isn't a question, it's just merely a comment. I also, especially during the recitation about Dayenu, I also thought about Ukraine and the Ukrainians, and at this time, my heart just really went out during that reading for them.
And Palestine. And for Palestine, yes.
And Afghanistan and
Yeah. Yes. I'm reminded, I believe Representative Omar recently made a statement about how can we possibly look at Putin as a war crime when the exact same things essentially have happened in Palestine, and yet turned a blind eye to those. And I often think about, I had seen something that really bothered me about, this was something, it was like a chain email that was sent around in Jewish circles about that somehow Chernobyl was sort of punishment for the anti-Semitism that had occurred in Russia, and I was quite disturbed by this because those people who worked in the plant in Chernobyl, those people were not necessarily anti-Semites, and even if they may have been part of a country that was an oppressor to some groups of people, that doesn't mean that we can't feel for their loss as strongly as we feel the loss of our own neighbors.
It's worth remembering the history there, that also that the Holocaust was ended by the Red Army, and that the Galician Panzer SS division, which was Ukrainian, was involved in massive massacres of Poles, Jews, and Roma under the Bandera, the Bandera organization of Ukrainian nationalists. And many of the people that collaborated with Nazis now are glorified in the current Ukrainian government, which is a puppet government of NATO and the United States. So sometimes it helps to have truth against a large avalanche of media falsehood.
Yeah, and when I think about all of these conflicts, since I get some at the podium, I get to share whatever thoughts that come to my mind. I think often about this one particular service at a U church in LA that I went to, where their central point was that, very simple to understand, there is no them, there's only us. At the end of the day, we're all working together to journey towards truth. And there is we can try to parse out, okay, who are the good guys, who are the bad guys, especially when we look at the Middle East. Is there any way that we can possibly parse this and say, oh, well, these are the good groups, and these ones are the bad groups, and now we know who we're supposed to support. And I don't know if there is any solution that can be thought of in this way. I think we have time for just one more question. This is getting to a heavy topic. Do we have one final comment to finish us before we go for coffee hour? Bill.
As I said, this is a rough holiday sometimes when you think about the details. And considering what you just said, that there is no algebra that moves all of the objectionable items of humanity onto one side of the equation, which I find really, really, okay, I can't use language like that right now. I could, but I shouldn't. But it occurs to me, you know, we've got what, 2 12-step programs within we've got at least 2 12-step programs that have something to do with this church. Maybe that's the key. Yahweh's a wrathaholic. I'm a frequent idiot. We're caught by the human condition into doing some appallingly stupid things. And maybe, although striving for the good is one thing, you know, take a page as well from the Course in Miracles. Is there a little bit of light here that will make us better people? We admit that we're broken, break out the duct tape again, and it is spiritual duct tape, 2 rolls this time. And maybe that's the key, is that not looking for the ringing ball of pure holiness, but to be a little bit less of a jerk than I was at the start of the week.
Thank you. Well put, Bill. Yeah, and since you didn't want to say it, I will. In the words of, I think Lewis Black said it, Old Testament God is just a dick. He's just a real dick. He floods the earth. He does all this horrible stuff. And so maybe to Jews, since God is a dick, maybe we have to be good if we're going to make the world better, since God's not going to do it for us. Let's leave it at that. I think that's it. Let's break.